Honorable Prime Minister, distinguished guests and delegates. Dr. Manmohan Singh, of course, needs no introduction. It is my pleasure to welcome you, sir, to India Today's 6th Conclave. Sir, I'm going to say something which I don't think the media says that often to you, because we're always focusing on negative things. Sir, you're halfway through your term, and I must tell you that I truly believe you do the country proud. Your dignity and decency, your integrity and intellect, and the respect you enjoy from world leaders are widely admired in this country. You mark a redeeming cultural shift in politics in India. In my introduction to you in our conclave 2 years ago, which you were so kind enough to address, I had said, and I quote, "India is a nation assailed by the worst instincts of politics. We may need an apolitical politician to set it right. We may need the old doctor's prescription of revival." And Dr. Saab, what a revival you have brought about. You are presiding over one of the world's fastest growing economies. I was recently heartened to hear you at the conference of an international magazine whose name I just forget. It's the one which claims the Indian economy is overheated. And I heard you say there very confidently, the best is yet to come. So we look forward to that. I must also say, sir, you have learned the lesson of shining India well by taking pains to ensure that growth is inclusive and equitable. And if that was not enough, you surprised us all by becoming a master politician. When you came to power, many gave your coalition only 50-50 chance of survival. But you have definitely managed the great coalition, which ranges from those who think Karl Marx is still alive and kicking, and those who are just there for the ride. Sir, all this apart, I believe your premiership will be remembered for the path-breaking nuclear deal with the United States, which you personally championed. In one masterstroke, you signaled our special status with the superpower of the world and legitimized our nuclear ambitions. I believe the real import of this deal is yet to be fully appreciated. Great leaders don't get entrapped in history, but shape it. And you, sir, have done this with the nuclear deal. With this, you have shown that India can take the lead in the brave new world only if India is not bogged down in its domestic problems. With a fast-growing economy, our commitment to democracy, and our size, there is no reason India cannot be a decisive player on the global stage. And you, I think, sir, is the right person to be its choreographer. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, to give his keynote speech, "Can India Take the Lead?" Thank you.
Shri Aroon Purie, Shri Prabhu Chawla, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I am truly delighted to be once again at this annual conclave. However, I truly wish that I was here to listen rather than speak. You have gathered a most impressive group of speakers, and I would have heartily liked to hear them all. I'm very happy that this dialogue began this morning with the opening remarks of His Excellency, the former President of Iran, Mohammad Khatami. I have the highest regard for his wisdom, his scholarship, and his statesmanship. We are delighted to have him in our midst, and it is a source of great joy to me personally because it gives me an opportunity to renew our friendship. He is a great citizen of the world, a great leader of the Iranian people, and a great friend of India. It is pertinent that at a conclave like this, we recall his wise words at the UN Conference on Dialogue Among Civilizations in September 2000. It was a dialogue that he had initiated, and I recall his saying that, and I quote, "The ultimate goal of dialogue among civilizations is not dialogue in itself, but attaining empathy and compassion," unquote. I believe the ultimate goal of conferences like this should also not be that they are an end in themselves or merely commercial events, but that they help open up our hearts and minds and make us more understanding and compassionate. President Khatami concluded his address to the UN with these wise words, and I once again quote him: "In the domains of economics, politics, and culture, problems and issues rarely remain local and indigenous. We all deeply engage in making use of each other's social, cultural, and spiritual findings. The penetration of Eastern religions to the West, repercussions of Western political, cultural, and economic developments in the East, and most significantly, the expansion of global electronic communications have all rendered dialogue among civilizations a really close to home," unquote. I fully endorse these wise sentiments of our distinguished guest. Today, they have acquired renewed relevance in international affairs. We in India appreciate them more than any other people. Such a dialogue among civilizations has been the living reality for more than a millennium in this ancient and sacred land of ours. India is home to all the great religions of the world. India is home to scores of languages, hundreds of dialects, dozens of cuisines, a medley of races, colors, landscapes, and culture. The idea of India, as we all know, was shaped by this notion of unity in diversity. That's why I have often said that the success of the Indian experiment is vital to the survival of humankind as a whole. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Aroon Purie has asked me to reflect today on the theme, Challenges for the Brave New World. Can India take the lead. I believe India is one of the forerunners in showing the world the way forward in dealing with one of the biggest challenges facing humankind in the modern world. This is the challenge of preventing the so-called clash of civilizations and enabling not just a dialogue between civilizations, but creating a confluence of civilizations. India is indeed a confluence of civilizations. In building an open and pluralistic society within the framework of a liberal and secular democracy, we have shown the world a way to deal with the complex heterogeneity of modern societies. Every nation must endeavor to be an open society in which the plurality of the human experience can find full and free expression. I'm not talking of majorities tolerating minorities. I'm talking of all groups, big and small, living together in harmony. In seeking to build a democratic society, the leaders of our freedom movement grappled with the challenges of a brave new world they were forced to confront. As I have often said, ours is an ancient civilization, but we are a very young nation. The survival, growth, and vibrancy of our nation has vindicated the faith of our founders in the democratic values of pluralism, liberalism, and secularism. It has enabled us to show many embattled corners of the world a practical way forward in enabling the confluence of civilization to materialize. If India has a message to the world, it is this: humankind must shun all extremes and all forms of extremism. We must reject all ideologies of exclusion, for nature's way has been to be inclusive. Nature had, of course, willed the survival of the fittest, but human societies have come to accept the idea of live and let live. Our conception of an inclusive society is based on this very principle. This is our message for the world. But it is also a message we must constantly remind ourselves of. When I see intolerance in our own functioning, when I see hatred and mutual suspicion, when I see an unwillingness to engage in constructive dialogue and debate, I wonder if we ourselves have forgotten the very principles on which our nation was conceived. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference wishes us to focus on the challenge of dealing with a brave new world. Every generation would like to believe that it is entering a brave new world. That spirit is natural and welcome. It inspires each generation to seek new horizons and find new answers to problems, old and new. Many, however, will rest content reinventing the wheel and pouring old wines into new bottles. But some will strike out and truly find new pathways. A society that encourages creativity, enterprise, innovation, and risk-taking will be a vibrant society, and the future belongs to such societies. Such a society will be capable of dealing with the challenges of a brave new world. I believe we must do all that is possible to allow the full expression of such human creativity and ingenuity to flourish in our country. This we can do best within the framework of an open society. But such a society will have to be a literate and educated society. It will have to be a healthy and caring society. It will have to be a knowledge-empowered society, a free and egalitarian society, functioning within the parameters of the rule of law and civilized conduct and discourse. Above all, it will have to be an inclusive society. It has been our endeavor to make ours such an inclusive society, but we have a long way to go. There are, unfortunately, no shortcuts in history. The management of human affairs requires patience as well as effort, not just vision and leadership. Humanity has often been led astray by those who claimed a unique vision and offered bold leadership. We live in a highly interdependent and complex world where dialogue and patient consultation is required to deal with the challenges humanity faces today. To appreciate this and participate in an honest and constructive dialogue is the most effective way to deal with the challenges we face today. Ladies and gentlemen, I have often said, both in the context of domestic politics and international conflict, that there is no issue that cannot be resolved through dialogue and discussion. The approach of seeking an eye for an eye, as Mahatma Gandhi taught us, can only leave us all blind. Violence and force have never offered lasting solutions to human problems. This consultative and consensual approach is what has kept our diverse nation together. My friend Amartya Sen has written about the argumentative India, but our real strength has always been our willingness to live and let live. It is not our argumentative nature that we must celebrate, but our assimilative nature, our consensual nature, our accommodative nature. That is what has contributed to the richness of our composite culture and durability of our civilization. This is why I also believe that India can bring to the global high table, to institutions like the United Nations and its Security Council, it can bring a new approach to dealing with global challenges, whether these be challenges of environment, energy security, food security, or empowerment of the underprivileged sections of society. Ladies and gentlemen, much is often made of our attitude to globalization. The organizers of this conclave have asked me to reflect on how India views the world and the processes of globalization. Let me say that I sincerely believe that we Indians have always been open to global influences and that ours will always be an open society. Even in the economic sphere, we are today as open as any free market democracy in the world. The numbers, of course, are there to tell the story. The share of foreign trade in our national income is today comparable to that of many developed market economies. But our openness is not just about these numbers. Our openness is defined by our attitudes and by our confidence in ourselves. Our media is free and open. Our popular culture has always been welcoming of outside influences. Yet we have stood securely on our feet. As Mahatma Gandhi used to say, we have our doors and windows open to the free flow of ideas, yet we have confidence in ourselves that we will not be overwhelmed by any of them. I want more of our citizens to appreciate this reality. I am often surprised by the insular outlook of some of our political and intellectual leaders. Their narrow-mindedness betrays a lack of self-confidence in our nation. It is an attitude I do not associate with being Indian. We must make better use of the opportunities the world offers us. We must be more open to our own neighborhood. In a fortnight's time, we will be hosting the SAARC summit. I want India to be more open to all our neighbors. I want our neighbors to feel secure and confident that in India they have a well-wisher. We see their prosperity as a guarantee of our own prosperity. We see their progress as reinforcing our own progress, and so must they. The destiny of the people of South Asia is interlinked and interdependent. Our region must and can move forward through such a cooperative and purposeful engagement. I see a similar mutually beneficial interdependence between India and the wider neighborhood of the Indian Ocean and the Asia-Pacific regions. For centuries, our forefathers sailed westward and eastward as teachers, as traders, as merchants, and as monks. That is how we should once again approach the world at large. We must rekindle this interest in the world outside and be willing to deal with the opportunities and challenges it presents. I do believe, however, that to be able to do so with greater confidence, we must invest much more in our own capabilities. This is the real challenge before us. We need a new revolution in education. Our educational system has to be modernized, made more accessible, made more relevant to our needs and aspirations. It must equip us better to deal with an ever-changing world. Science and technology today have made it possible as never before in human history that chronic poverty, ignorance, and disease do not have to be the inevitable lot of a majority of humankind. We must therefore harness the full potential offered by developments in modern science and technology. We must be able to draw on the intellectual resources of the world and also refurbish our own resources. We need world-class academic and research institutions and infrastructure. We need a more competitive industry and a more dynamic agricultural economy. Our energies must be focused on these priorities at home. We must get our act together so that we can make the best use of the opportunities presenting themselves before us. Ladies and gentlemen, I said earlier that every generation believes it is entering a brave new world. Yet one often finds that the challenges we face are, after all, not so new. Others have faced them and dealt with them. There is much we can learn from them, be it in education or healthcare, be it in building roads or better sanitation, be it in water management or conserving energy, be it in manufacturing or agriculture. There is much we can learn from those who have been here before. At the same time, there are challenges which are truly new. The challenge of addressing the ever-increasing consumption needs of billions of people. If all the developing countries of the world were to aim to a standard of living which is presently seen in the more developed countries, we need to reflect what the environmental consequences would be. Is our planet capable of sustaining a high consumption lifestyle for all its inhabitants? After all nations face a single environment, and hence the ill effects of unbridled growth would affect all nations equally. This is certainly a new challenge for which there are no ready-made answers. As a large nation, India can certainly take a lead in showing the way to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, if we need to learn from each other and tread into unknown territory, we need an open mind. I am troubled when I hear people say that India is an open society with a closed mind. That is not the India I have spoken to you about so far. The India I know and I cherish has been open to ideas from across the world. The India I know values knowledge and creativity. The India I know respects learning and scholarship. If we can approach the world and our future with that kind of self-confidence, we can regain the glory of our wondrous past. I hope your conclave and other such gatherings encourage us to be more open-minded, more willing to learn, more creative, more enterprising, and more courageous. In that lies the road to a brighter future for our children and for our grandchildren. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, covering the whole range of subjects. And the way you have spoken, there is nothing left. But I'm happy to note you have accepted our request for asking a few questions. We can't ask a Prime Minister any questions. We can only clarify certain issues which must be bothering this audience out here. I'll request, I think, first question I should concede the right to my chairman to ask the first question, initiate the discussion. Mr. Aroon Purie.
Mr. Prime Minister, you are in many ways the father of reforms in this country, and we are seeing an unprecedented growth in our economy. But if you look at it, that the economy has grown in areas which you've actually liberalized and taken away the hand of government. Telecoms, civil aviation, IT industry, where in fact government had nothing to do with. So everything grew. So my question is that politicians are accountable to their electorate, businessmen are accountable to their shareholders, but I find that the bureaucracy is not accountable to anybody. And this is something in India in terms of the fact that you have rightly laid emphasis on spending money in social sectors. But where is the guarantee for outcomes? You have the outlays, but where are the outcomes? This investments in education, health, all the social sectors. That's a worrying part of the growing economy. I wonder if any action would be taken in terms of making the bureaucracy more responsive and more attuned to public needs.
Well, let me say that I do not want to claim that everything is right with our bureaucracy, but having been a bureaucrat for a large part of my life, I sincerely believe that our bureaucracy is often unnecessarily maligned. It is not that there are that you find dishonest, inefficient bureaucrats, but what impresses me is that despite low salaries, we have such great commitment to national goals, national ethos in our bureaucracy. Having said that, I do recognize that in a fast-changing world, we need to reflect on new ways of doing things. Outlays have to be transformed into outcomes. And it is for this reason that I had a year ago appointed the Administrative Reforms Commission. They are, I think, in the process of looking at our administrative system, our administrative structures, and I sincerely hope that before long we will have a blueprint for action.
We have very few questions, I think. The Prime Minister is busy, and there are some, you have spoken, Mr. Prime Minister, about infrastructure, and we have got one person from Bombay, Mr. Kampani. He handles infrastructure like back of his palm. Mr. Kampani, I think we can hear you.
Mr. Prime Minister, sir, as you laid out, in a 2 months back conference on infrastructure, stating that we are going to spend in the next 5-year plan, starting from 1st of April, about $350 to $360 billion. I think the need of Indians, and especially it is the growth of India is really dependent on infrastructure, and we all accept it. The worry which we have, sir, is that how we are going to finance it and how the policy framework of this infrastructure is made public as fast as possible. So I would like to hear from you your views, sir. How do we create innovative strategies? Is government doing some public-private partnership on that or anything else? And how the new innovative way of financing can be done? And in this, I would like to leave one thought to you because you talked about SAARC. Can Asian country create an Asian currency which could finance Asia? How the euro dollar came into picture? Because by 2009-2010, we might have a $5 trillion of funds available in Asia, and there will be another $5 trillion maybe available in Middle East, and that all goes to waste in just buying bonds and selling goods. Is there any thought on this which the audience could understand from you, sir?
Well, let me say that I do not believe that I think the time is right for an Asian currency like the euro. I think having a common currency requires a degree of coordination of domestic economic policies, which is not clearly in sight in Asia today, but that is a dream, that is an ambition we all should have, that one day I think the convergence of our economic policy would lead us not only to a common market, a community of Asian countries, but also a common currency. Now, coming back to your first questions about infrastructure, I think there are a lot of good things are happening. If you had asked me 5 years from now, 5 years before today, I could not have imagined that our investment rate would rise to 34% of our GDP, that our savings rate would rise to about 32% of our GDP. And given the young profile of our labor force, in years to come, India's savings rate will rise very substantially. And I am confident that if we continue to create an environment conducive to promotion of risk-taking, promotion to savings, lack of resources is not going to be a problem for financing the needs of our infrastructure. That doesn't mean that we do not require new strategies, new ways of looking at things. We need a strong, vibrant debt market for long-term investment, because public utilities require a long-term perspective. They require ability to mobilize funds from the markets on a long-term basis, and therefore that is one area where we need to move and move fast enough. But instrumentalities like the public-private partnerships are now well established. Now, the viability gap funding is truly well established. And I am hopeful that whether you look at roads, whether you look at telecommunication, whether you look at airports, whether you look at seaports, or our railways, there will be new experiments of public-private partnerships. I think a lot of exciting things are happening in our country, but being too close to the events, we don't notice them.
We have a question from media, I think. Pranjal?
Sir, I'm Pranjal Sharma from TV Today. The policy on special economic zone was supposed to take India to the brave new world where we could take on the manufacturing might of China. But today political parties are suspicious of it. The farmers feel that their land is being taken away very unfairly. The civil society represented by NGOs think that this policy is extremely subversive. Would you think that there are deep flaws in this special economic zone policy, and would you be looking at completely overhauling it?
Well, let me say that the special economic zone as an instrument of economic policies have come to stay. But in the process of implementation, we have been exposed to certain problems which cannot be dismissed. And I think it is the strength of our democracy that if we find that there are some flaws in our policies, we can and we do set in motion mechanisms to redress those gaps in our performance. And one of the gaps is that when it comes to acquiring land for public purposes, there have been inadequacies in compensation designs, in ensuring that all the stakeholders who suffer in the process of land acquisition, their interests are in fact taken into account. We will redress these concerns. A more humane, more effective, more just policy with regard to resettlement of land oustees is in the process of being formulated. And pending that, there is, I think, some delay in going ahead with the announced policies of the government with regard to special economic zone. But I do believe that we should address these concerns if we want the policy to succeed in the long term. India is a democracy. Democracy sometimes seems to be fickle-minded, but I do believe that is our strength. These are decisions which are in many ways irreversible decisions, and therefore it is very important that before we move, if there are any gaps in performance, gaps in design, gaps in implementation, we should halt a little bit, even though it takes time, but the cost of delay are going to be much less than the cost that would arise if wrong-headed policies were bulldozed, regardless of the human, social, and economic consequence.
I'll take the last question. General Malik. General Malik. Yeah. No, mic is here.
Thank you.
Be a little brief, then I had my request.
Thank you. Sir, we've truly enjoyed and benefited from your thoughts on India's role in challenges for the new brave world. My question is very small compared to the subject that you have just now, on which you have spoken. My question, sir, pertains to the demand being made by a political party in Jammu and Kashmir on demilitarization, or troops reduction, and some other connected issues. I feel that it's an important demand being made because it has impact. I'm not saying that the demand is should be conceded, but it has several implications. It has an implication that the professional assessments can be marginalized for political expediency. It has implications that we may have problems of center-state relations, coalition, political coalition partnership, and even, I would say, politicization of security, national security issue in larger context. We are all getting the impression that the political expediency is perhaps taking over, marginalizing professional advice on such matters. May I have your views on this subject, sir? Two things. Firstly, that how do you look at this? And secondly, I think we all in the nation would like to have your assurance that professional advice on such matters will not be marginalized for political expediency.
Well, let me say unambiguously, professional advice, wherever relevant, will be given full scope, and there is no question of marginalizing it. Therefore, I think that misunderstanding or misapprehension, I think, has no basis. The other thing that I would like to say is we are in the process of discussing these matters with Mufti Sahib. He has come at my invitation, and I would not like to conduct a dialogue with him through the media or through public parties. It's not proper for me to enter into any discussion on this subject.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's the last question to finish over because he has to go. And I have to thank the Prime Minister now. No, sir, now he has to stop because he has to go. And Mr. Nair, if he's here, I must correct him for the first time when he made a statement, if you have been to the Harvard, you are king. I think he has to correct his impression. We have a Prime Minister who's from Lahore. He went to Punjab University as a postgraduate, and he's acclaimed international, global thinker and economist and Prime Minister on his right. You don't have to go to Harvard to be recognized in this world. And he's being recognized because he went to Punjab University first, later on to Oxford. So, you just heard him. He was part professional, part political. The wisdom of it you can ignore only at your own peril. He is a hero who is adored both by the Marxists and the marketeers who are present here. I am quite familiar with his professional part. Sir, actually, I am one of your fortunate beneficiaries. You were my teacher in Delhi School of Economics. You may not remember me, sir. My IQ level those days may have kept me away from your attention, sir. I do regret. I seriously regret it, sir. So today, I was thrilled to be in this hall once again. It was as if regaining my lost professor after all these years. But I was doubly thrilled by the political tone of my professor. When he said, I'm often surprised by the insular outlook of some of our political leaders and intellectual leaders. It is an attitude I do not associate with being Indian. That's the political tone of an academic prime minister, which were not expected from him a couple of years ago. The other points are you made about the bureaucracy. I don't think such kind of lateral induction into bureaucracy. We would like more bureaucrats like you who had joined. I would appreciate if you can start the process of getting more Dr. Manmohan Singh's type of bureaucrats in the civil administration. Sir, I knew this political change was bound to happen. Unjustifiably termed by some of us as an accidental prime minister, was bound to transform into an indispensable prime minister, sir. The least political of the Indian prime minister was bound to become one of the smartest students of Indian politics. Today, Dr. Manmohan Singh is the 21st century face of our India. He is a global ambassador of an India that is moderate, modern, tolerant, and ambitious. A statesman and a gentleman, he is a power as an understatement. At the high tables of globalization, he is a free marketeer with a conscience of his own. In the brave new world, he still carries the old world charm. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Manmohan Singh is never one of them, the typical political class, as we know all of them. 3 years in power, and he has already shown you can be in politics without getting dirty, Mr. Queen. He is focused without being fussy. He doesn't dictate, but delegates. He is soft, but not weak. He never orders, yet commands respect from all of us. As CEO of India Inc., he has chosen the path, set the targets, outlined the bottom lines, and led from the front clearly and firmly. Tough times never last. He has been through too many tough times. He leads a coalition of so many parties. So, tough times, as they say, never last, but tough people do. And he is one of them. Our Prime Minister survived tough times and proved his mettle very well. The less you talk, which he does, the more you are listened to. When he speaks, people listen. He talks less and rarely, but when he does, it is heard at home and abroad. It is due to such envious virtues that India is not just on the right path, but in safe hands as well. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for coming here and addressing the audience. Thank you very much.
May I request Mr. Aroon Purie to please give a memento to our Honorable Prime Minister as a token of our appreciation.